7 o'clock, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Blackburn.
Present.
Bingham. Here. Hedge.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Crayville.
Here.
Michigan.
Here.
All right.
Yes. Turn the microphone on.
I want to remind
Pass it around. Everybody could turn your microphone on if it's not on. Should have a green button lit up. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Councilman, may I add one item to the agenda? Under discussion topics, may I add the item of the village meeting minutes format to be discussed?
Anything else?
As amended, I'll second the motion.
Second? You got the first? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Can I get a motion to approve the regular council meeting minutes from April 24th, 2023?
I will so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Public comments not published on the agenda. I just want to say those wishing to comment on the budget, we are having the public hearing tonight, so you have an opportunity at that point if you would like to speak about the budget to speak during that time. But are there any other comments? Seeing none, move to discussion topics. The first topic is Mel Ettinson. It's with great sadness that I announced the passing of Mel Ettinson on May 10th. Mel dedicated nearly 30 years to Bingham Farms as a trustee. Many of those years were spent wearing different hats to make Bingham Farms the jewel that it is today. I personally looked up to Mel as a mentor and a straight shooter who always had a pragmatic approach to local government. One of Mel's greatest council accomplishments was his work with the Birmingham Area Cable Board, where he worked tirelessly to get our council meetings recorded and televised. So for that, we can all thank Mel. Mel was a man of few words, yet he made a huge and lasting impact on council and on those of us who were lucky enough to work beside him. Mel's family has suggested that those who wish to further honor the memory of Mel may do so by contributing to one or both of the 2 organizations listed in his obituary. So we've provided copies of the obituary, and they are on the table near the door. If you're interested, you can pick that up. At this time, I am going to ask for a moment of silence for Mel Ettinson. Thank you very much. Next is our Police Department monthly report. Chief Roberts is here.
Good evening, everyone. You have our written submission. A couple of things I want to highlight from a crime perspective, as I have several times before. We have seen an uptick again in larcenies from cars, and those are cars that are left unlocked. So please, all residents, please lock your cars at night or when you're leaving them unattended for a period of time. We did have, on Bristol Lane and around there, we had some interesting activity as it relates to mailboxes. Somebody clearly went down the road looking for items left in mailboxes, opening all of them. We're still to this date not sure what, if anything, was stolen, but somebody was clearly rifling through mailboxes. So again, the recommendation there is if you're mailing bills or mailing anything with a check, do that from the post office, put it in a large box, don't mail it from your home post office if possible. We would appreciate that and would cut down on the chance of fraud and theft. Couple of final notes, personnel related. Our last sergeant just last week graduated from Northwestern University Staff and Command College, so we're very happy about that. All of our command staff has now been through advanced training at Staff and Command School, so congratulations to Justin Wells. He's our detective sergeant right now, and he did a great job at the school. And then finally, Saturday, and you probably all saw it, was Touch a Truck at Bingham Farms Elementary School, and we were well represented there. We had several officers working it, including the mounted unit, the horse, and the kids were really happy with the horse, so that worked out really well. So other than that, that's all I have, unless you have something for me. Yes?
I would like to mention, I had a conversation with one of the victims on Bristol Lane, and she's very upset about her mailbox being opened.
Yeah.
And she has done some research and found that Ferndale is initiating a program with cameras. It's the same one used in Troy and these 6 other communities.
Oh, it's a lot of communities. It's called Flock.
Oh,
Flock cameras, yeah.
I figured you'd know. Where a camera is placed, it would be at the entrance of a street.
Mm-hmm.
In many of ours, there is a single entrance,
Yeah.
or only 2, like Bingham Road, 14 Mile 13. And they don't monitor, apparently, all the vehicles. But when there is any kind of illegal activity, they can look at the film.
Yep.
And, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
It's outstanding tool for law enforcement. It's fantastic, and you don't even need a license plate. Let's say you're looking for, a red Ford Taurus that has a hubcap missing. You can put that into the system, and the system will automatically identify any red Ford Tauruses in the area that have a hubcap missing.
Wow.
It's a fantastic system. We would love to have it. We've had the representatives in our station talking to them. It's really expensive, and that's the downside to it. It's called Flock. That's the name of the company. If anybody would like to go online and take a look at it. Several cities in the area have installed it. Southfield has it. Farmington Hills has it.
Right. Ferndale said it was about $20,000.
$20,000
Yeah.
for Ferndale. Yeah, the problem is not only do you have to purchase the cameras and have them installed, which is not actually the big expense, it's
The
the data
ongoing.
storage and all of
Yeah.
that costs you, and it's annual fees that you have to pay for that. So, yes, we'd love to have it. It's a great tool for solving crimes. For the mailbox incident, so the interesting thing about that is that the mailboxes were all left open, and typically what we see on those types of crimes is that they don't want to attract attention to themselves, so they grab what's ever in there and they close the mailbox again. So this could have just been kids going down, having a fun time, pulling all the mailbox doors open and rummaging through mail, that type of thing. So that's what it looks like at this point, because really we haven't had any complaints that anybody's identification has actually been used or stolen or anything like that. So
Good.
it probably was just kids or somebody thinking they're having a good time doing that. But yeah, I'd love to talk to you more about these Flock cameras, but unfortunately that is a big budget item that we would have to plan for a couple of years out.
Has Franklin thought about doing it?
We have same concerns though, and frankly, if we have a crime in either Franklin or Bingham Farms, we can pick up and call our detective friends in Southfield or Farmington Hills and say, hey, has this car come through your city? Could you let us know? And they'll do that for us for free. So, we're so small that we might be able to just rely on our partners in the area.
Which is nice.
To cover that for us, yeah, if we get a suspect vehicle, right?
Do you know roughly how much it would cost?
It depends greatly on how many cameras you install, so it's a per camera thing, but we looked at doing just 4 cameras and putting them all at 13 and Telegraph so we could get complete coverage, because that's really the main artery into both villages, and it was something on order of $20,000.
Yeah.
Per year.
No, the initial cost is 20, and then it's like 5,000 a year or something like that for data storage. It's really expensive, unfortunately. It'll come down, though, I think, once the initial costs, I think we'll see it come down. There's very little competition in that market, actually. There's only 1 or 2 companies that actually do it. So, right now, anyway.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
Yeah. Doesn't seem to be that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have our fire department monthly report. Chief Everbuck.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
You have my written report. The only thing I wanted to add was we had an incident in the village of Franklin several weeks ago involving a structure fire. Their house was occupied at the time, and the fire caused significant damage to the garage, which was attached to the house. But the garage construction did its work. The drywall kept the fire from entering into the house, so we were very happy with that. We did have some extension through the void space for the ventilation part underneath the roof deck, and so there was some damage caused from that, but we're very happy that we were able to have a good stop, and we were even happier that we had the assistance of 3 other fire departments helping us. So what we're doing as a result of our insurance service office visit is we've changed what we call our box alarm cards. Those are the mutual aid aspects that fire departments use to help each other. And so when we had the structure fire, we got the support, we received the support of Beverly Hills, Berkeley, and Farmington Hills. We're very happy for that. It really helped tremendously. And as they are on our, what we call cards from the old school, we are on others. So it worked out very well. From the public relations standpoint, I spent some time with the Bingham Farmers Mobile Watch, which I think I probably spoke too much and said things that I personally thought that that is what
It was all
expect
good.
out of
It was
So-
all good.
No, it was good until I started talking about the animals and things like that. And yeah, I still would do that. So now that it's on the TV, perfect. So that worked well. We also spent some time with the police department over at the Touch Truck event last weekend. We had 2 pieces of apparatus, our rescue and our engine. We were fortunate not to have any runs during that time frame, so we were happy for that. And the kids only messed with probably a dozen switches, which were still fun. But it's an annual event. So anyway, unless you have any questions, though, that'll conclude my report. Yes, sir.
I know you had a budget increase this year, at least in part because you hired another full-time officer. And I guess I'm wondering what it looks like for you in the future. Are you having any new people volunteer to be volunteer firemen, or is that
I
going
would
away?
love to sign you up. Legal counsel is expensive, and we could, no. It's a great question. And one of the problems, I shouldn't say one of the problems, it's not a problem, but one of the realities we face these days is the lack of volunteer capability. It's not due to a desire, but rather with the economy being what it is, just the ability to have the free time in order to devote to the fire service is dwindling. In terms of the amount of education and requirements, responsibilities, things like that, anyone who gets on the fire department, as we'll say an active member, can look at somewhere between 10 months and a year of training before they're certified and licensed in order to participate. So that diminishes where we're at. We had a program that afforded our volunteers the opportunity to work per diem shifts at the station. That program at its peak had 7 or 8 that were doing that on a regular basis. We are now down to 1. Because our latest person, I just actually not last Saturday, but the Saturday before, graduated from medical school, and his residency will be in South Carolina. So that will take him away for several years, and if he continues on to be a surgeon, 5 years. And hopefully we'll see him back. But this is what we're this is what we're facing as an agency. The other attributes to the budget are things that are obviously beyond our control. Diesel fuel at $5.79 a gallon it's just not coming down. We're trying to source to other venues to lower that cost. Healthcare continuously is going up. The cost of workers' comp is rising. We're even charged workers' comp rates on our volunteers, even though they're not compensated. Insurance doesn't look at it that way. We are looking at trying to maintain costs as best as possible, and we are hoping that we could start looking at other venues in which to do that. But the problem is that as we rely on other companies for support, whether it be fuel, Oakland County for pressure sewer costs, things like that, we're kind of beholden to the costs that they impart on us.
Right, my question wasn't directed so much in terms of like why your budget went up, because I think I understand why it went up,
Okay.
and I don't have a problem with it. My question is, given the reduction in the amount of volunteers, if that
do I see this
continues,
continue?
where does that leave you 5
No,
years from now?
okay, I see what you're saying. So, in terms of where we're at, the only other addition that we have forecasted would be when the assisted living facility just south of 14 miles completed. Other than that, I don't look at adding any additional full-time staff.
Okay, thanks.
I would say two things. The first is, just as I mentioned with the structure fire, we're reliant on mutual aid from other agencies as they are from us. We're looking at continuing that effort towards leveraging personnel within other agencies, number one. Number two, from a business perspective, I understand what it is we cost and breaking it down by millage rate, whether it's general fund or fire or charter millage, has a cost. And looking at those around us, there's a cost as well. And from an economic standpoint, I look at this as a business. If we get to be too expensive, then we get to go out of business because there are others who can provide that same service. I'll be upfront and honest with you, because that's how I look at this. And I had this discussion with a member of the Bingham Farms community based on our ISO review, saying, well, why don't you strive to be a 1 or a 2? And my answer was pretty simple. The amount you would pay for us to achieve that level may not be worth the savings that you get on your fire insurance. So,
Thank you.
so yeah, you're welcome. Sorry for the long answer. But.
No, very helpful.
I actually forgot what I was going to ask. That's all right. I was fascinated by this. So. Do you have a written description of a volunteer, the requirements?
Oh, we do.
On the website?
Is it online? No, not really. So it comes down to a simple thing. For the folks who want to help us, we want to work with that person to see how they can help us and how we can help them. It's kind of like a relationship. So it costs everyone and everyone benefits from it. So some folks, an active member, what I consider active, is a firefighter and EMT. Certified firefighter, licensed EMT. A reserve could be one or the other, and then if there are others that just want to help, we don't have too many of those, but there is a lot of jobs that need to take place in the fire department, and we've had those too. We've looked at high schoolers, we've looked at internships, everything. So rather than putting us into I think I'm getting the hook to leave, but rather than put us in a box where we're stuck to one definition, I'd rather say if there's interest, give me a call.
Okay.
And I'd love to discuss it.
All right.
Yes.
Is there an awareness in the community that you are looking for volunteers?
We try as much as possible. So going out to the events like the Touch a Truck, we'll put out to anyone who asks that we're looking for volunteers. We've had items previously in both the Bingham Farms emailed newsletter as well as the Franklin newsletter that we're looking for volunteers. We have banners that we put up for events that take place, like the Bingham Farms Family Fun Day. We will put things out, messaging out that way. We also, from time to time, put together a postcard that we sent to all addresses in the villages that talk about volunteering. So it's out there. It's just, it can become difficult for folks to have the time where 50 years ago it might have been a one-income household. Now it's 2+. And raising kids and all of that. There's, everyone is vying for time.
But I trust this is ongoing communication.
Always. Oh, very much so.
Yes.
Yeah. We, about 3 months, we registered with the National Volunteer Fire Council as well. So online, it's a federal group. Anyone who's looking for the ability to volunteer in the fire service can go to that website, put in their address, and they'll see all kinds of different opportunities that exist. Taking up
Thank you.
way too much.
Not at all.
So-
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We could volunteer. Help out.
There's one chair up here in front if anybody would like to sit down. Administrator's report, Ken?
Thank you. I don't have much to add, but I would like to remind everybody that large item pickup is this Thursday, May 25th. And your large items out at the street side at 7 a.m. If you have any questions about what constitutes a large item, you can call our office or you can call Car Trucking directly. Thank you.
Oh, Ken?
Yes.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Is there any plan of replacing Carl?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. We'll miss him, you're right.
I know.
He's a nice guy. Very nice. Good job.
Next is road reconstruction financing discussion.
And I think that's me.
That's you.
I've been asked to give a short presentation in terms of what the advantages and disadvantages of either doing a number of road SADs or a general increase in tax millage for roads would be. And so I've got a brief presentation that shouldn't take too long. As you know, the village, as a result of Chapter 30 of the Village Code, allows us to do special assessments for improvements. There really are not a lot of advantages to doing special assessments, but there are a couple, and these are the two advantages. One is that the properties that would pay for a special assessment are actually going to be the properties that are benefited by the improvement, because state law requires that the improvement be in a relatively close proximity to the property that's paying for it. I'll get into that more in a second. That really is the biggest benefit or the biggest advantage that a special assessment district would have for financing roads. The other advantage is not a great advantage, but you don't need to have a vote of the people to do special assessments. Special assessments can be established either by a resolution of the village council or by a petition, although the petitions are simply advisories, so you don't have to have a vote of the people. There are, in my opinion, at least when looking at improving more than just a few roads in the village, which I think is what the village council is considering, there are a number of disadvantages to utilizing the special assessment district. The biggest one is that there is a legal standard in the state of Michigan that there must be a special benefit to the property that is being specially assessed. And what that has been defined legally, and the big case is the Dixon Road case, Dixon Road versus Novi, is that there must be a reasonable proportionality between the amount specially assessed and the value which accrues to land as a result of the improvement. What those fancy words mean is if you're specially assessed $2,000 for a road improvement, then theoretically the increase to the value of your property should be somewhere in the general vicinity of $2,000. It's not necessarily a dollar for dollar match, but there's got to be some close proximity to that. That standard makes it difficult when you're trying to specially assess for an improvement. One of the problems that you have with special assessments that you wouldn't have with the general tax is if somebody doesn't think they're getting the reasonable proportionality or getting the special benefit from the road improvement, they can sue in the Michigan Tax Tribunal, and they can they can challenge whether or not they get the benefit or not. So that's one of the disadvantages of the special assessment. In addition to the disadvantage of the special benefit, special assessment districts, while you can draw the boundaries any way you want, they need to be contiguous. So if you're improving a number of roads throughout the village, you can't have 5 pockets and make them all one special assessment district. So if you're improving some roads over here, and some roads over here, some roads up there, in my example, that would be 3 separate special assessment districts you would have. And the problem with that becomes, road improvements are expensive, and they're only going to get more expensive. And if you do 3 or 4 special assessment districts to try to tackle the roads that you need to tackle, the costs are going to be enormous in each of those special assessment districts, because you're going to have a very few number of properties being specially assessed to improve the road. And from a cost standpoint, it is certainly going to result in higher costs than if you did a township-wide assessment. So that's another disadvantage. The other disadvantage of a special assessment district is in the scenario where you're just specially assessing the residences that live on a road, you're going to be leaving the businesses from being specially assessed or paying any portion of that, because unless they're on the road being improved, you can't specially assess those businesses because they're not getting a special benefit. And when you back them out of the equation, when you back the businesses out of the equation, unless they're actually on one of the roads you're improving, again, it's going to result in a higher assessment for the residential properties than a tax would. So those are the major disadvantages of a special assessment. The legal standard that you've got to show, the reasonable proportionality between the amount of the special assessment and the value of the property that is accrued as a result of the improvement, the requirement that there be a special benefit to the property before you can specially assess it, the fact that because the districts are going to be smaller and there's going to be fewer properties in those districts, the cost to the residents, or the owners of the residences in those special assessment districts are going to be higher than the general tax would be. And then finally, not including the businesses, because in most of the scenarios that you would have, and I'm not saying every single one, but in most of them, it appears that the roads would be primarily residential in nature. There wouldn't be businesses on those roads. So those are the disadvantages. With respect to a general village-wide tax for road improvements, the big disadvantage, is, and it clearly is a disadvantage, is that there will be some people in the village that will be paying tax to improve roads that perhaps they don't use. Somebody in the east side of the village would be generally taxed for a road improvement maybe that occurs in the west side of the village, a road they never drive on. So that is the one fundamental disadvantage, I think, for a general tax. The advantages, however, I think far outweigh the disadvantages for a general tax. Number one, all properties in the village are going to be taxed for the roads, and that includes businesses and other uses that are not residential uses. And as a result of that, those businesses are going to subsidize or lower the cost of what the residents would pay, because they're not on the roads that are being improved, but yet they're paying their equal share of it. So that's going to result in a lower cost. You don't have, if you do a general tax, you don't have to worry about meeting the legal requirement of a special benefit. You don't have to worry about meeting the requirement that the amount of the tax is roughly proportional to the increase in your property value. That's an advantage. And another advantage is that you can't be sued. If the voters vote in a general tax, that's the tax, and people pay it, and they can't sue to prevent it. There is another way. I suppose you could, besides doing a special assessment or besides doing a general tax increase, those are the two major ways that you would improve roads. I suppose you could try to take money out of the general fund, but realistically, when we heard the report from, I believe it was HRC, there were a lot of roads that need to be done, and I don't think that the village has the budgetary capability to pay for those, and so any monies that you would be pulling out of the general fund would really just be putting a Band-Aid on the problem. And in the long run, the costs are only going to go up. So I realize these are tough decisions that the council's got to make. None of the methods of financing are perfect. We are a little premature because we don't know exactly what the cost is going to be. But I think these are issues that council as well as the public needs to think about. What is, of all the methods of fixing the roads, none of which are maybe appealing, which one brings with it the most benefits and which one results in the lowest financial impact to the residents in the community. And from everything that I've seen so far, and based on my experience in doing this for a number of years, it would appear that the general tax is probably the most advantageous of all. Not probably, is the most advantageous of all of them, but admittedly not perfect.
Just to clarify.
Sure.
When you say a village-wide tax increase, you're speaking of millage?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure we're using...
Absolutely, and I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but yes, you're absolutely correct. It would be a millage amount. I mean, basically how you calculate it, I suppose, is once HRC gave you an estimate of how much money you needed and over what period of time you would need to collect it, at that point you could decide how many mills you would be comfortable asking the voters to approve to pay for roads. And it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be whatever amount you feel comfortable with. But yes, it would be mills. It would be.
A couple questions. With all the disadvantages you listed for the special assessments, how does Birmingham do it? I know they get special assessments. Do they just run into a bunch of problems with it, or is...
No. I can't speak to Birmingham as much as I can speak to Bloomfield Township and West Bloomfield, because I represent both those communities, and they both do a lot of special assessment districts. Let's just take the example of Bloomfield Township, because they do a lot of the residential roads via special assessments. But they require a petition circulated by the people in that area to have a certain number of 51% of the property owners, or 51% of the owners fronting on a road need to sign the petition and submit it to the township, and then they go down that process. But that's a piecemeal approach, and even in Birmingham it would be a piecemeal approach. The other, I don't want to say it's an advantage, the other difference between Birmingham and Bloomfield Township in the village is that generally their special assessment districts, we're currently in the process of doing one in Bloomfield Village. There's hundreds of properties in there, so it's one thing to do a half-a-mile road when you've got 20 properties on it. It's a whole other thing to do a half-mile road and you have 5 properties on it. The math is easy. So they have bigger special assessment districts. But they need to, like I say, in the perfect world, they wouldn't have to be contiguous, and you could have 5 of them and all make them one. But the problem with that is then you're eliminating the legal requirement about the proportionality. So that's why if they're not contiguous, they've got to be their own separate special assessment district.
So if we have Bristol Road and off of it comes Sager Court, that could be in one?
That could be one, sure.
Okay.
And you could draw that any way you want. But what you can't do is you can't have one over here and one over here, and somehow, there's got to be a benefit that's similar. So in your scenario, Bristol Road and Sager, yeah, that'd work.
With regards to the issue about having to be a benefit for the property, we have a certain amount of money already that the village has been accumulating through the past, I don't know, how many years for roads.
Right.
It's just not going to be sufficient.
Correct.
So if we took that money and applied it to redoing the roads and had special assessments to just cover the shortfall, wouldn't that help with the issue of
Sure.
the proportionality in terms of the...
You absolutely can use, in either the scenario, the special assessment scenario or the millage scenario, you can use township general fund monies or township road monies to supplement, absolutely. And yeah, it would lower the cost, certainly.
And would that, in terms, reduce the risk of the not having the substantial benefit to the property if what they were paying was only half, let's say, or a third?
It would reduce it, yes. Yeah, it wouldn't eliminate it, but that standard's always going to be there, but it would certainly help, sure. But again, you could also do that with the general tax, too. You could levy less mills and use some money from the village's road fund to lower the mills assessed, too.
Right.
I think the biggest problem that you're going to run into, just pushing the legal standard aside, is just the lack of number of properties you're going to have in each special assessment district. You know, in Bloomfield Township, by way of example, some of the special assessment districts are $50,000 per parcel. I would say that's on the high end. They're usually 30 to 40 in that range. And that's with a whole bunch of properties, a whole bunch, it's very artful, with a lot of properties involved in a special assessment district. And, you know, here you've got large lots and not as many properties. I think the cost, if you had a special assessment district and you're doing a half-mile road and there's 15 properties on it, it's just going to be astronomical.
I understand where you're coming from. I just have because of the unique nature of this village and the fact that slightly more than 50% of the voters, of the residents, live on roads that are not roads that we would be fixing because they're either private roads or condo roads or whatever. I don't know how we would pass a general millage because I don't know how someone in
Outland
Trails, for example, why they would want to vote to redo the road on Sager Court. Because they don't, half of them don't even know where Sager Court is, much less travel.
The answer to it is eventually those roads are going to get, all the roads are eventually going to get bad. And when you can do it in a way that forces the businesses to subsidize a lot of it. Look, there's a lot of business on Telegraph and 13, and that's from Telegraph from 13 to 14, that whole area. To get them as part of the equation where they have to pay to help pay for that cost, to me that's huge.
I agree. That's a big advantage. And in fact, over the past 7 years, they have been paying into those businesses have been paying into all the road funds that we've accumulated. So they and all the people in Diane's condo association already have contributed a fair amount of money towards the reconstruction of the roads. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Living in the... I'm sorry.
Go ahead, you go first.
Go ahead.
Because of the split that Kurt referred to, almost 50-50 on those who live in condo associations and have private roads that are also coming up for renovation, and not having any help from the village as a whole for those private roads. Are you aware of any community who has dealt with that private road scenario and in some way addressed it?
West Bloomfield, they do private roads. I believe Bloomfield Township does special assessments, or in fact, I know they do. Both West Bloomfield and Bloomfield Township have done special assessments for private roads.
But have they ever in any way assisted the homeowners on those private roads?
Not that I know of. Auburn Hills has assisted. They have contributed, the last special assessment district they did, I believe they contributed 50% of the cost of the road.
So Diane, you're thinking that if we do a tax increase, that it would cover all roads?
That is correct, or at least recognize the fact that of the general taxes that I'm going to pay for the public roads, there's something that's going to come back to our community from this increased millage that will, in some small proportion, add to the pot of what we're going to have to pay out of our pocket for private roads.
that can be done? You can use village funds to help subsidize private roads? I wasn't aware of that.
Not private roads.
That's the question she just
Yeah, that's
asked.
what she
Those are private roads.
That's what I'm just asking.
Oh, no, I misunderstood. No, even in the Auburn Hill scenario I gave where there was 50%, they were stub roads that were public roads, but only certain properties actually got the benefit of using it. No, they were not private roads per se.
So then the incentive for those who live on these private roads to pass a millage when they're facing their own bill coming for their roads it's going to be a pretty tough call, huh?
I mean, if you can make the argument that they, and I don't want to be argumentative, but I don't know, people that live in the condos may say, well, I'm never ever going to drive in any of those public roads. I'm not sure that that's how accurate that really is in real life. And, in terms of a long-term program, in terms of fixing the roads in the community, doesn't mean that you eventually won't be dealing with some other roads that people do drive on.
All I'm suggesting is that you put up something for a vote that recognizes these attitudes and in some way tries to address what will be questions from about 50% of the population.
I guess the best example I could give you would be empty nesters, or maybe, I guess empty nesters is a good example as any. They don't have any kids, but they still have to pay school taxes as part of their property taxes. They would still pay for the DIA. They would still pay for the zoo. Probably other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. But there are a lot of things that you're paying for the betterment of the community that maybe don't immediately directly impact you, but you still pay for it because it's good for the village. And the road thing, I think, is even a little more direct because it's hard for me to believe that even living in a condominium, that people wouldn't use any of those public roads that are being fixed. But maybe they don't. I don't know. But I guess that's the best example I could give you in a situation that's sort of analogous to it.
You mentioned I think it was in Bloomfield Township, where before they would institute a SAD district, they need a petition from 51%.
51% of the properties fronting on the roads to be improved.
And if they don't get that, then they don't do the road?
Then they don't do it.
They let the road... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and, the trend has been for, especially as time goes on and these roads get worse and worse and worse, they are eventually getting there. They don't have a whole lot more to do. I mean, there's still some subs that still need to be done, but they're tackling Bloomfield Village, which was one of the last ones to deal with. It's huge. Bloomfield Village is very significant, and they're doing a number of subdivisions behind Kirk in the Hills. I didn't know how many subs were back there, but there's a ton. So they're generally getting there. There's a couple of sections in the township that are always going to be dirt roads because that's what they want. I think the Glens was one, if I'm not mistaken, and there might be another one. But yeah, that's the policy. They have adopted a formal policy saying unless we get a petition signed by at least 51% of the properties fronting those roads, we will not improve them. And ultimately, the conditions of the roads kind of forced the hand, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that's what happened in Kirkway. It just got to behind Kirk in the Hills. It just got it was close to undrivable.
Yeah. The challenge we know from the roads presentation is there's like an optimal time to maintain and repair. Once you get past a certain point, you get to like remove
then you
and
gotta
replace, and that cost is multiples of repair at times. So, but I think it's a bit. I appreciate the pros and cons, but I think we're in the next couple months we'll see something from Hubble. I don't know. November. Okay, so wow.
It's good to be thinking
But
about
it's very
issues.
good. Yeah, I appreciate the
I have a question.
insight.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dee.
A couple questions, hopefully. You talked about a village tax, and in reading through what I see there, is there a certain millage that this council could propose onto the village or put onto the village that doesn't need a vote? Or do we need to go for a vote for any increase in millage? The reason I suggest that is I've seen the millage go from, 6.9 up to 9, and we're still, as far as millages go, we're very low
Yeah,
as far as taxable.
Section 9 of Chapter 10 of your charter allows you to go up to 20 mills. You're at 9-ish, I think, somewhere in the vicinity.
That's without a village vote?
No, that's where you are right now. You're at 9 and you can go up to
Correct.
20. I think the problem you're going to run into is you may have to do a Headley override.
Correct.
Because I thought with Headley, we could go up to,
Yeah, so
you know, go up to 12, that
So-
would be 3 millage points.
what happens is, because of Headley, a base is established, and then every year, although I don't know that there was a rollback this year, but most every year you get rolled back, so even though you're allowed to collect 20, if you're collecting 10, then it becomes 975, and it becomes 950, and it becomes, so you're down to about 9-ish, with a maximum legally allowable limit of 20 mills, but you can't go to that 20 mills without having an election to do a Headley override. So you're going to have an election if you go over the, and I think Bill's got the exact number, what?
I think it's 12 point something or other.
12.07.
Yeah.
So we could go to 12 mills without a vote.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And just to follow up with that, my understanding from looking at our budget materials is that 1 mill is
About 200,000.
just a shortly less than $200,000.
Yeah.
So if you did the 3 mills without a vote, which I'm really reluctant to do a 3 mill without a vote, but even if you did that, that would only bring in $600,000
Per year.
per year.
Correct.
And-
But if we did this pay-as-you-go, depending on what roads, that might be the way to go.
Along with, and we'll talk about the budget later, but we've got, over $4 million in the general, between all the different funds.
Right.
Local road. And, one might argue that our general fund is more conservative than it needs to be. So there's, I don't know how much,
Because
$1 million or $2 million that's there.
My concern would be going to a bond, which would cost us a lot.
Yeah. Agreed.
And if we could pay for it this way, then bond assessing, then the village would be very high.
So if we, I'm also not a big fan of like, in any way, increasing people's taxes without them having a vote on it. So either special assessment or otherwise. So I'm just wondering, just based on what you were saying earlier, if we went to the public and said, we currently have, I'm just throwing out a number here, $3 million that we can put towards the roads. The cost of the roads, and again, I'm making this up, is $6 million. So, and we'll have the cost for each of the roads. So people on Bristol Road, we have right here today half the cost. If you want to give us an assessment petition to do the rest, then you can have your road done now. Otherwise, we'll just wait. And that way, people are deciding for themselves whether they want to do it as opposed to, us.
I just think you're going to find, if you did the math, you're going to find that the cost is going to be astronomical to do those separate roads via SADs compared to a town or a village-wide assessment, tax assessment. It's just going to, they're going to be huge numbers. Just based on my experience in Bloomfield Township and West Bloomfield, and what the current rate, in between $30,000 and $50,000, it's a lot of money.
I also want to add another option to this list, that we could do nothing. We could do nothing.
Sure.
We are in the information gathering stage. We know that we won't make any jump until November of 2024, because I think we all feel strongly that we would want it on a ballot, which wouldn't be before 2024. And so there's so many pieces that are left so many pebbles left unturned still, that we don't really know a lot of answers. And so that's why we're doing this. I appreciate you being here today to continue to learn and gather information. And if the time comes and we have all the numbers and we as council decide this isn't something that we're going to do, then we vote it down. The problem is the longer you go, eventually somebody, so the next generation who moves into your house is going to have to pay for the roads, and it's going to cost them a lot more money because the road will have deteriorated that much more, and the cost of repairing the roads we can pretty much predict is going to continue to increase significantly. So do we, continue to maintain while we're here and do our best to maintain the village, or do we want to put that on the next homeowners? So I just want to put that on there, that nothing's been decided. These are not our only two choices. We could decide to just continue patching, let the roads deteriorate from underneath, and eventually they will become impassable and they'll have to be fixed. But we'll probably all be gone by then.
Madam Chairman, there's nothing that says that we can't investigate new precedent-setting ways in which to pay for these roads over this period of time that we have. And yes, we really appreciate all of your efforts and your research, but can we expound upon that research to a greater degree in other communities, in other cities, in other ways?
Of course, we can always research. I do think we have an expert here who deals with it in other communities all the time. And obviously, we have to, we're confined to laws and all of that kind of thing, but we're always open to new ways.
But again, I guess beyond your expertise, are there other people that you might bring in or call in or recommend that we contact from other states perhaps, or different areas where we might say, hey, I never even thought, and I'm going back to this point about if you can give a little incentive to the voters who live in these condos, you're going to have a far better chance of passing a millage. And there's got to be someone somewhere who's thought about doing this and succeeded.
Right.
So I guess I'm trying to say, is there a way to start thinking out of the box within this period of time that we have, rather than just saying option A, B, and C today?
I will say that in terms of special assessments and road millages, I've been dealing with them for 40-plus years, and I've done countless both ways. In terms of financing, there may be some creative things that you could do. I don't think the answer is so much legal in nature as opposed to talking to people that work with bonds and whatnot, although bonds would likely have some input here, potentially. But looking in other states, again, the laws are going to limit what you can do to some extent, and so looking to other states isn't going to help you, but in terms of creative ways of financing, sure, there's always creative ways you can come up.
Is it our charter that prohibits, or is it a statewide law?
Well, the special
that
assessment
prohibits some participation on private road funding? What kind of law is it?
The state law, it's actually the state of Michigan Constitution, which prohibits using, and I'm going to use the words they use, but then I'll tell you what it means. You're prohibited, a municipality or any public entity is prohibited from using public funds for private credit, or public credit for private purposes. And what that means is you basically can't use public funds for a private situation. You can use public funds for public purposes. So, using public funds to help a charity, for instance, would be that kind of a scenario. So, the Constitution limits public corporations like municipality, like the Village of Bingham Farms, from using its publicly raised tax funds for private purposes. And that's where it gets difficult. Now, there are exceptions to that. You can help with respect to special assessment districts, and you can do special assessment districts for private roads. But at the end of the day, the funds paying for fixing those private roads in the special assessment district are the people that own property in the district. So, but the community can help using its public resources to some extent in setting those up. But to simply, if a condominium said, look, we've got 15 private roads in our condominium, and we were able to raise $2 million of it on our own through dues and whatnot. We need another $3 million to do it. The village would be prohibited from using their funds to fill in the deficiency there, because you'd be using public funds for private credit.
Is it possible for an HOA development to petition the city to have their roads become not private and become public roads within the village?
Yes, it is.
So that's another way
Yeah.
to think about it. Okay, that's all I'm saying, is this kind of session to think outside the box.
And if you did that kind of a thing, then you'd be eligible for more Act 51? Actually, thank you. Act 51 funds. The more roads that you take that become public roads, it allows you to get more money from the state of Michigan. So yeah, that's
There could be some possibility in looking into that then.
yeah, absolutely.
So what's our action on that?
I think the biggest thing at this point is you need to know how big the nut is. You need for HRC to say, this is the least expensive way that the village can proceed and still get the roads to a good condition, and find out what that number is, and then figure out what the best way to attack it is. But in the meantime, it's always good to have this information to be thinking about it.
Right, I just want to make one other comment, and that is, I want to thank our president for having these discussions on these various issues now as opposed to like later. I think Lisa's done a very good job in trying to make these sessions all in the public meetings so that they can be recorded, so that people in the village can see them. And I know we're going to put up a website pretty soon where all of them will be, in one place where people can go. And I think it's great that we're talking about it now, even though no decisions have been made. We're at least gathering information so that we can be ready. And what I would ask is if we can have at our next meeting a discussion sort of along the line Trustee Crable was talking about in terms of, and Bill, I think this would fall primarily on you, about exactly how much money do we have now that we could put towards the roads. Because there are funds in different buckets all over the place, and I know that we can't spend all the money we have in the general fund because the state would then be upset because we don't have enough reserve and all that sort of stuff, but we can spend some of it, and I think that's one thing we can do now while we wait for the final cost updates coming in November. So if we could have that discussion next month, I'd be grateful.
I'd also like to comment on the idea of having more than one company bid the project. I think we need at least 2 or 3 road building companies take a look at the proposal and give us a price. I would even go so far as to suggest that we have another engineering company look at the findings and confirm the assessment of what's really needed, because many have commented that that maybe some of the roads won't need to be done for 5 years. That they're not in that bad a shape. Those that are not traveled heavily by trucks. We have a lot of construction on Bingham Lane, and it takes a toll. And so we're more vulnerable than Old Orchard and Shagwood, certainly. So I'm just, as a business person, you're running a village or running a business, it's making sure you have all your ducks in a row.
I agree with that, Kathy. I think that every time I get anything done in my house, I
I'm
get at
sorry,
least
I'm
three
sorry,
things.
excuse me. There's no crosstalk.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
This is my first time at one of these meetings.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate that.
Yeah, but I just
During
agree
public
with-
comment, you can stand up at the podium and give your name and address, and then you can address the council. I'm sorry. Did you get the PACER? I just want to make sure everybody has the report. We do have a report of the different roads. So all the roads won't be done, like, at the same time. We would take the advice of our experts, but I'm assuming we'd start with the worst roads and move to the next roads, which would be years-long projects.
I think also the view was by whoever was they would have multiple quotes on any of the roads as well. So I know that there was going to be several. To your other question about having a second opinion from the engineers, that we'd have to pay for because we're paying for this one.
Yeah.
So I guess my personal view of that is I'd want to know what that would
What it
cost
costs first,
before.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's prudent.
yeah, but I understand we absolutely would want multiple quotes on the actual work to be done based on quality of their past work and cost.
Yeah, and might even contact surrounding communities to get references of experiences that they've had with different companies, and good experiences, negative experience, I think would be worthwhile.
Which I'm sure Hubbleroth and Clark would have some information on that as well. Because they're very well, I don't know how many communities they work with, but it's a lot. Does anybody have any more road
Good discussion.
discussions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For coming tonight and giving us all of that information. Right, I'm just wondering if I should just do on this. Can I do that?
Your discussion topic. If there are any questions from the audience, you may have them ask. And people make statements. But it's on a public hearing.
Right. It's not on the agenda, but I'm going to ask for public hearing, or
Public comment.
public comment, not a public hearing. Public
Construction.
comment only on road construction at this point. If somebody would like to stand up, please go to the podium, ask for, state your name, your address so that we can record it, and make your comments. As I was going to say,
3 minutes.
let me get to my other piece of paper. It's a 3-minute maximum. We will time. There won't be any crosstalk between council and the public, or amongst the public and the speaker. And let's see.
Good call. Sorry.
Okay, that's for the next issue.
Kathy Hageman, Bingham Lane. Just as a point of order, that the agenda states that it's public comments on items not on the agenda, so I would assume public comments should be heard for each agenda item. Point of order. Also, with regard to the roads, Bingham Road receives Act 51 monies from the state, and I'm wondering if that would have any impact on a special assessment district for doing the roads. Don't expect, just a question.
I can try to answer that if you want. I'll leave it up to how you...
I don't want to start a whole conversation, but you can go ahead if you want.
As I understand F-51 funds, it's based on the number of public roads you have in your community, and it's paid to the community directly, I believe. But Bill can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we would get money for Bingham Road being one of the roads in the village.
Oh, I was just backing up what Kathy and Aaron had just said, is that my name is Sheila Burley, 29550 Bristol Lane. Just that I concur that we need to get several quotes in other communities with recommendations, because like anytime any of us do any work on our homes, we all get at least 3 quotes. We get recommendations from our neighbors, and I'm all for transparency with that, and that way I think we can, financially come up with the right decision. We want to kind of compare. We live in a pretty affluent area, and people know that. Sometimes I think it's really good to go to other areas too, where we can compare if it's the same like work. Why not do that? I think sometimes as soon as people come to this area, they just assume that we have deep pockets, and most of us don't want our taxes raised, so why wouldn't we try to find the best value for what we're getting? Thank you.
Thanks.
Jared Guillaume, 30329 Bristol Lane. I do have a couple of handout for each of you, if I may. That's okay?
Sure.
Okay. Give me a second to get these out. Let's tune in my 3 minutes. Sure. Okay. Perfect, thank you. Things that doesn't come along. 99 bottles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is just a write-up. There's a group of residents within our village that have gotten together and kind of talked about the road budget process. And these are some of the main bullet points that have come out of that. So, obviously pending confirmation for the road project, including its scope and timing, which is extensively discussed and talked about already tonight, being that it could have to go to a vote, not this November, but following November, right? So we're thinking 18 months. But as we know, on a big project such as this, that I think I heard the range somewhere between potentially in the millions, 12 million to 17 million was a range that was thrown out at one point. I think we need to start really getting the ball moving on this, right? And so what we have discussed and come up with is that we really need to have a strategy, right? And a strategy that's avoiding ballot proposals for millage increases, which ultimately we feel will most likely fail, right? If we try to do a millage increase. Nobody's going to vote against that. We've already discussed that heavily. We think that the road project should assume a phase-in, pay-as-you-go approach. So what that means is avoiding a bond approach. We know right now with the way the economy is, things are very scary when it comes to investments, right, with any of the markets. So that would be a very risky approach to trying to accumulate those funds. A special assessment, as was discussed earlier, is complicated, sudden, and incredibly divisive, right? So it's going to be an extremely difficult approach to that. In the case that all roads must be done at once, it's been discussed extensively as well by the residents. We're not in favor of that. And the residents as a whole are not in favor of everything really done at once, should be a phased-in, pay-as-you-go approach, right? Which I feel like, based on the conversation here tonight, we're leaning towards that option for the most part. And with Diane's comments, getting creative along the way with how we do that. So I think that's fantastic. Budgeting process should include specific capital allocation designed for projects such as the roads. This is a huge thing that comes up, as I've heard in previous conversations, every 15 years, right? So, and it's a lot of money if that's how often and frequently it's supposed to come up. So how do we do that? So we're proposing 2023-2024 fiscal year budget should develop and include specific list of cost reduction opportunities. Cannot believe you've been working on that already as we speak, so I think that's fantastic. But the goal, we feel, should be a target of $50,000 plus, right, with those. And then, as far as the taxes are concerned, from residential and commercial, there should be a separation between the residential, commercial property taxes in order to evaluate trending in light of the vacancy issues that we're seeing with the commercial side, right? So there needs to be a separation there.
Time's up. Sorry.
No problem.
I think you hit most of your points, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
He'll have another chance, just to be clear, because I'm very interested in what he's talking about. He'll have another chance to speak in the budget session.
During the budget session, we'll
Just to
have
be-
another public hearing. Well, that is the public hearing.
Okay.
So if you want to speak specifically to the budget, that would be a good time.
Thanks, Lisa.
Is there anybody else? No. So we are going to move to our additional item, which is village meeting minutes format.
I'll just give a little background. At a council session in March, during the trustee comments, I made a comment that I would like to see more detail published in our actual council minutes, specifically on follow-up items, action items, that they be included in the meetings, and also pertinent things. Today's discussion is extraordinarily pertinent to all the village residents, and there are a lot of action items that are coming out of this, a lot of things that we need to be doing, and sort of follow up on them in a strategic manner, month by month by month, is imperative for our progress. So I'd like to make a motion that the minutes be expanded as follows. I make a motion that the Bingham Farm Village Council meeting minutes be expanded to contain information on action items to be carried out by council members and/or staff members, and that the progress on each of these action items be reported on a monthly basis at the following council meeting. That's my motion.
Motion,
Yeah, that's no problem.
Need a second.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Yeah, you would. And now you have a discussion.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Yes.
Can I maybe ask our village attorney what his view would be on adding those to the minutes?
From a legal standpoint, there's not an issue with it. It's more of a administrative function and tracking it, but legally it's
No issue with
I'm just not sure how you intend for it to work. Like, what is it that...
Well, for example, if I might, today, the fire chief gave some examples of the need for volunteers. And rather than putting into the minutes like we had last month regarding the fire chief's report, the minutes basically said, monthly report, well, for the police department, Roberts presented with additional commentary. The additional commentary are words. What was the commentary?
What was the subject of the commentary, at the very least? Was it mailbox robberies, or what was it? Just to document what the subject matter was. As I looked at 4, 5, 6 years ago in the minutes, they had all kinds of information, and I was looking to really create a trail on something, and I was able to do so. But when I came to our current council meetings, I couldn't create a trail because there was just no way. Now, you have to listen to 2 hours of video or whatever it is, but I think that in the interest of everyone's time, to expand these minutes a little more would be very helpful. And it's also communication to the members in our constituency. So those are the reasons.
I would like to add, it's when we talked about the camera system. I mean, the chief was enthusiastic about it and knew that it worked, it was successful, but there were budgetary issues. So I think what would be interesting is that I volunteer to follow up on budget issues and get back to the chief on what other communities are doing that save money, or whatever. But I'm saying this is something that we shouldn't just let fall off the table. I mean, there are issues like Yev. I'd love to hear what's going on in the commercial district. I'd like to know the contacts, and even a status of how many businesses do we know exist. Is that up from last year or down from last year? What's the goal this year? How are you going to work with the agents, the real estate agents, in attracting new businesses? I mean, there are things that we need to be able to follow up on so that we're taking action, we're actually accomplishing things, and there's a record of that. I think that's what you were getting, yeah. So I think it's an important element of what we do.
And it's visible to the community.
Sorry, I have another. Who prepares the minutes?
Yeah, he does.
And Dirk, you review them or no?
No, I do.
You do, okay. I just wanted to understand if there was additional cost.
No, I don't.
So if I may boil this down a bit. Okay, police chief had his thing. He said it could be a quick comment, something about the cameras, costs, and so forth. Mailboxes, closing and locking your car doors, that kind of thing.
Need for volunteers.
Right. And then if you get to us, then, okay, D.E. Hegeman said this, or made this proposal, or had this comment. Diane Howard had this comment. Is that, are you taking it that kind of thing?
It doesn't have to be to a huge extent what the discussion was about, but the subject matter and what action comes out of that. If we're talking and there's no action from what we're talking about, we're a mute council. We are supposed to be doing things, and let's just document what we're supposed to be doing and follow up on it. That's all I'm asking, is a guideline in the minutes to do that.
I guess my comment is I'd like to, I don't know how I make this motion, to table this discussion until next month. I'd like to discuss it with the administrative staff and look, we have like a fire council representative here, so maybe there's other ways where we can get some words out. So I think there could be more to it, and I think it'd be nice for us to each take the month.
You can make a tabling motion which would override it, but you have to get a second for it again. But, and there's no discussion on a tabling motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to table this discussion until next month, till we do more talk about it.
It's a prevailing, motions are not all equal. Under Robert's.
I'm not saying no. I'm saying this is just out of the blue. And if we could...
Well, I brought it up in another session, but in my trustee comments, but they were never documented, so it fell off. I'm just trying to keep it from falling off again.
Right. I'd just like us to all have time to talk about it, and like I said, talk to our administrative staff, who are the ones that will be doing it.
Or, I suppose you could all withdraw your motions and just put it on the next agenda. That's another way you could do it too. But a tabling motion takes prevalence over other motions. So.
Can I just ask Diane, would you mind if it was done next month as opposed to this month?
Maybe even do a little research to see what other
Right.
get kind of that's what I'm looking for.
Benchmark?
Like templates, what other...
Almost a item by item by item, here's how we're going to set it up, how we can do it. So that what Diane's saying is that, okay, this was said, this is the comment, this is this, and then go that way.
I'm being extremely minimal in saying action items. I'm not saying discussion. My motion said action items.
Right, but
So-
I'm saying that, just like you said, we can explore different options for roads, I'm saying we can explore different options for how the minutes, I'm trying to be more inclusive in
Are
the
you?
conversation.
Okay.
Like, this might be something we could put to a work study session topic, where we can more discuss it.
As long as there's follow-up, I don't care.
Would you have an issue talking with me about it between now and June 26th? And then we could...
Well, I stated the motion. That's pretty much how I feel.
Well, I think I'd like to be involved in the discussion, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that we could probably come to some agreement.
Who would be coming to the agreement?
Well, it would be brought back to the table, of course.
All of us.
Did you have something you wanted to...
No, I just, when you said it, we would discuss it and bring it back to the meeting, what are we bringing back as council members? If it's
Some enhanced meeting.
just our own individual thought on what Diane put as a motion?
I was thinking that she and I would talk about some ideas that she just kind of brought forth. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, so you would bring it to me, we would sit and talk, and we would present it to council. That's all. It sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Diane, if you want to do this right now, then we'll do it right now. It's just that I've never even heard of this before. I've never even heard that there was. I know you said you raised it once before. I'm just asking if it wouldn't be better for everybody if we just delayed it for 1 month. I'm not suggesting that we're not going to do it. If you want to vote on it today, as long as there's no second to the tabling motion, then you can have a vote today. I'm just wondering whether it might not be a good idea to just discuss it for a month.
It might be a great discussion topic also for the next study session.
I think that's where it belongs. That way, rather than Ken and I talking about it, it's just all of us talk about it, because it's all of our responsibilities, not just Ken and I.
Right, but it is an administrative, it's part of Ken's job. So to start there, and then, like I said, bring it to a work study session, I think would be,
That's fine with me. Yeah.
Fine.
the only topic like this would, we would have had it, known it was coming. So, I'm not saying I see any issue with it. I'm just saying I would like to think about it.
So point of order, could Diane retract her?
Yes.
Okay.
So I need to retract the motion?
Withdraw the motion, and the second's got to withdraw the second, and then you're good to go.
Can I withdraw the motion conditionally that it will be brought up next month?
Yeah, I think that's the understanding, that at the study session in June, I think is the understanding.
Right.
After a study session.
Yeah.
I will withdraw the second as long as it's brought up next month. How's that? Yes.
Good job.
All right.
Withdraw. Whatever I say.
I'm good enough for you.
Next on our agenda is that we are going to reschedule the public hearing for the SAD due to a clerical error. Dirk, did you want to speak it? There's no legal issue, there's no...
No, there's no legal issue with it at all. It's my understanding that...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like so distracted. If I could ask for quiet.
It's my understanding that the public hearing was set at the last meeting, and notices were supposed to be mailed, and they weren't mailed. So we need to go through the process of publishing the public hearing again and mailing the notices. And so in order to do that, you need just a simple motion to reschedule the public hearing on the special assessment district to the meeting in June, which I'm not sure what the date is. It's 26th of June.
So may I have a motion to reschedule the SAD public hearing to June 26, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The concern I have, could this also be done with a special council meeting to approve early enough to, I'm worried about the tax bills going out?
We already checked that. That was the first question that we all had, that I had, was will this impact somehow the money coming in? And,
yes.
And it won't, because I guess the bills go out a month later. Bill can address that, but I asked the very same question, Mr. Hagan. So.
The end of June.
End of June. So you should
July 1 through payable through the end of August.
So we get paid basically a month later.
No, I mean, everything is still scheduled to go out. The issue was that the SAD was spread, the public hearing was set, but there's supposed to have been 10 days of each of the parcels being notified of that spread, which did not happen as an error.
Okay.
So it's just a delay, but it's not going to back anything up.
Right.
Okay.
That was a concern.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I am going to open the public hearing.
Presentation.
First? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Evaluated. Bill, please present the budget.
Sure, thank you, Madam President. We reviewed and we have a proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And what I'd just like to point out is that it is tracking as much as far as expenses to the village of what the components are. The largest portions, or the two areas that cost the village the most, are public safety, which represents almost 61%, 60.92% of the village budget. The second one would be public works, which represents 13.59% of the budget. And to give everyone just a little bit more detail around that, public safety obviously is police and fire, and the special assessment district for the businesses that receive specialized police patrol and response up and down Woodward for the commercial district. The public works portion, a large portion of that is car trucking, which collects the rubbish, compost during the summer, and large item pickup, as Ken had mentioned. So that's what really makes up that portion. So if you take a look at those two, that represents, close to 74, 75% of the budget. Everything else is broken down, and you will see it. The proposed budget is available here in the village offices. It will, once it's actually adopted, it will also be placed onto the website, as the former budgets have. But if you go down through it, library represents 5%, attorneys 1.78%. The other ones are really, really below, everything else really below 5% if you really look at 6%. So again, the two major is police and fire, which it has been in years, and then public works. The portion of a budget, just to remind everybody, is it's a projection of where we are to what we budgeted for last year, where we anticipate we're going to be coming in at for the end of this fiscal year, and then what the projections are for 2023-24 fiscal year. We have just a couple of components, as everyone may know. We have revenue tax, which is the largest base to bring in revenue, along with state sharing revenues and various other revenues that come in that don't make up that portion, like fines, permits, business licensing, things like that is detailed out in the budget. And then you have your expense portion, of which I just commented on. The two largest ones are public safety and public works. is I am new, but what I've gathered as going through and looking and studying it, the village is very fiscally responsible. It's been that way. The mills that we levied have been 9% for a number of years. I went back and looked, and if you look back 1993, the operating levy budget mills was 5.9. It kind of went up a little bit from there up to like 8.6 for a number of years, 7.4, 7.7 in 2012. In the 2015, it went to 8.4, and then it's been 9 mills that have been levied since 2020. The other thing that I'll point out is if we take a look at what's happened with the pandemic, with COVID, with inflation, with everything in the economic situation, barring 2008 when we had a dip in the economy, 9% compared to a lot of the other municipalities that we've looked at, it is a very, what I think is a very fair rate with that. We've been making sure that we can reduce or not hold the mills that we levy against the taxes and still provide the services in the village that is a great village to live in and to enjoy. So based on that, if we look at also where we are compared to taxable values from last year compared to this year. Real property tax values, Dirk had mentioned about Headley rollback. Real property tax values have increased by 5.9%. Personal property tax values have decreased by 12.23%, and the overall tax value of the village, including both real and personal property, is just under 5%. It's increased by 4.89%. Personal property, just for some folks that don't know, are actual personal property, tangible property that businesses have that they're assessed taxes on when Oakland County assessor goes in and looks at it. Copiers, fax machine, tangible assets that are there. This year, there's a rule that came out that anything $80,000 and less in value is exempt from tax, personal property tax. So anything above $80,000 was assessed tax. The Oakland County assessor and equalization is now looking at for the next tax year that exemption will go from $80,000 to $180,000. So anything that's at $180,000 or less will be exempt from personal property tax. So we'll look to continue to probably see the personal property tax portion change and reduce from what it was in the years past. But again, tax assessment property values are up 5.9%. The total overall adjustment to us or effect to us in the village is 4.89% increase. When you go ahead and you levy 9 mills against that, it's $101,832,708 in revenue that it's going to generate. We accounted for all of that within the budget so that we have a total revenue line of approximately $2.7 million. And I say approximate because that indicates that all taxes will be paid, that there will be no delinquency, that there won't be any issues with that on both regular real property tax and also personal property taxes. Moving over on to the expense side, we look at expenses, and we are the ones that we are contractually obligated to pay. Obviously, we pay those. We always look for areas of savings when we can. I always like to think about the village. First of all, the village's money is the people's money, and we need to make sure that I have a fiduciary duty to make sure that it's being spent wisely. And I look at it as my own money, right? With reference to the way that I would spend my own money, I'm very careful, very conservative, so I always think twice to make sure that we're not paying for something that we shouldn't. Always look for areas that we can conserve and save, change, consolidate on. And, there's other ones, for instance, instance, like library, it's just, the library contract calls for the lower of a certain percentage, and it's 3% increase for this year over last year. So that's something that we don't have control over, that we can change or try to lower. When we look at it overall, we're still looking at the end of the fiscal year 23-24, where we will have a surplus positive balance of about $150,000. In years past, that money at the end of each fiscal year has been put into the general fund, and it's been over the last couple of years that's been put into the road funds, that we are building up balances in those funds in order to address the issues with the roads. That's really basically all I have on the budget. I mean, I welcome anyone to have any questions or they want to look at it. Like I said, it's available here in the office and will be published once it's adopted.
Thank you very much for all of your work. It's not easy coming in as a new treasurer and having the budget dumped on your lap immediately. So I appreciate your extra effort in getting up to speed on that.
Just the one question. The engineering ARPA grant, can you remind me what that is, that expenditure?
Yes. It is balanced both in revenue and expense. It is, let me just go to it here.
$250,000?
Yes. Just give me one second. $250,350. It's made up of two items. One, it was the grant that we received from Oakland County, where we received the funds last year, and it's the ARPA money. So what we did for last year was, and I found this out through Raina, what Colleen did was, the former treasurer, we put it in unearned revenue. And the reason why we put it in unearned revenue was the guidelines of ARPA and the guidelines of the grant were that we can't record it until we spend it. So now that we have had it, we have now intend to start using some of those funds to pay for various projects and engineering studies on the roads. And because of that, now we have to put it in both the revenue side and offsetting on the expense side, because we have to track it and we have to report it. So a couple times a year, federal government requires that we go in and we tell them, have we spent it, what our projects or plans are to spend it, and if we've spent it, how much we've spent it and what we spent it on. So because of that, now we have to make sure that it's in an account on both sides. So it's in the revenue portion under intergovernmental, I believe, is where we place it in. On the expense side, we put it in a sub-account engineering ARPA grant. That's detailed in the line item on the expense side. To answer your question, Kathy?
It does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, because I had the same question.
I'm still looking for the tax revenues generated from the commercial district.
Okay.
Is the millage levied against them the same as ours?
It is. So the millage is levied, 9 mills is the millage that's levied across real property, personal property, total. What makes up real property and personal property is in the, it's called a Form L 4037, and it breaks it down into, we don't have agriculture, but I'll just read quickly down through the categories. The property classes are real agriculture, real commercial, real industrial, which we have none, real residential, which we do have, real timber cutover, zeros for us, real development, 0, and then it comes down in subtotals to total real property, total personal property, and then total real and personal property.
So what is that number? What do the building owners pay in taxes? What do we get from the buildings? Do we get anything from them?
Yeah, so it's going to be 9 mills. The commercial real property is $58,756.80 is the taxable, tentative taxable value for the commercial portion.
Okay, so what does that compute to?
Okay, give me a second here. $528,805.62.
Got it.
Bill, maybe just to comment, in addition, they would pay their SAT assessment.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And to answer your question on that, the SAD amount, the Special Assessment District, is, I have it right here.
Just shy of 400, isn't it, at this time? It's up there.
Last year it was $360,447, and this year the SAD, Special Assessment District budget is $390,532.
Got it.
And then those are spread across 27 parcels that make up the Special Assessment District.
There are 27 buildings?
27 parcel numbers.
Oh, multiple buildings on a parcel?
Yeah, we have some parcel numbers that have a couple addresses.
They do.
3, I think, to be exact.
Yeah.
And as the last comment that I just wanted to make, as everyone is aware, we've had it through Budget Subcommittee with Trustee Howard and Trustee Cradle, and then we had the study session. And I'm always open to answer any questions or research answers to whatever questions you or the public has.
So to further on Kathy's point, 528,000 plus 390 gives 918,000 of the 1.8 million in the property tax line.
No,
is
2.7.
attributable.
2.7.
Pardon me?
Of the 2.7.
Of the 2.7.
5.9 is of the 1.8.
Oh, okay.
590 is of the 1.8 plus the SAD.
Okay, so,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
go
no,
there.
no, that's,
Let Bill answer
so
that.
it's less than it's about 1/3
Yeah. Yeah.
of all of our tax revenue comes from the corporate sector in some way, shape, or form.
But I'm just thinking if we up the millage on the businesses, what additional monies? But that's another discussion.
You can't.
It'd be across the village.
Right, all of, but you break it down. Just wondering what they would contribute and what could go to roads.
Yeah, 30%.
Yeah.
I would just comment from a subcommittee standpoint, we've been through, I've looked at various versions of the budget. We had a several-hour meeting here to go through the details. The one thing I would highlight is that we had expected to, with respect to 2023, we had expected to have an excess of our budget of $150,000. We're now projecting that to be $250,000. So the village has saved an additional $100,000 from what the 23 budget was. There's several pieces to that, but I would think it reflects conservatism that is included in the budget and the fiscal responsibility that the administrators and the council have had to drive further savings. It wasn't increased revenue. We didn't go out and, collect more. We didn't spend as much for the most part for 23. And I think the projection for 24 of 150 is quite reasonable, and I think we'll work to achieve more than that in the actual results for 24. From my perspective, I would recommend the budget to be approved. I feel very comfortable with where we've landed.
And I second that motion.
I don't think it was a motion, but I appreciate the second.
But that notion.
There you go, that notion. That notion is set.
That's a good notion, yes, thank you.
Perhaps we should hold the public hearing now.
Yes.
We can always have more comments at this site after the public hearing.
Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing at 8:42 p.m. I'm just going to go over again that I will call on individuals. When you're called, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Each individual can speak for 3 minutes. There won't be crosstalk between council and the public or back and forth. So our public hearing is open if anybody would like to make a comment on the budget.
Jared Guillaume, 30329 Bristol Lane. So there are two motions I'd like to present. First motion is motion to create a team of representatives made up of council office staff and residents to be responsible for advising on the scope, timing, and funding requirements for the road project, including the alternatives for consideration. So a group of everybody. That's the first one. Second motion will be to develop an engineering solution that does not require a bond or a special assessment.
I can see the wisdom in both of those. No, but, yeah.
He's got it. His comments are very good. So, yeah, get them exact.
I see your motion. We're not going to make that motion against council tonight.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, all right, very good. Thank you.
We'll have an
Thank you,
opportunity to comment, trustee comments afterwards, right?
Right, this is just the public's time.
Okay.
Any other comments on the budget? No? Seeing no further comments, I am going to close the public hearing at 8:45. Is there any other conversation, council conversation? Does anybody else have any other comments? Yes.
Do we approve it then next month? Is that what goes on
We approve the budget next month.
next month, right?
I'd like to make a comment that I think it's very creative to have received this document, and that these motions, I think, should be given serious consideration by the council members at a study session, and that we really appreciate all of those who have participated in the committee to put these thoughts together and present them to the council.
Just a question. May I ask a question related to this? I know it's a bit of crosstalk, but I have a pertinent question.
Yes. I am.
You're okay with it? In 30 seconds, could you tell me what an engineering solution to not require a bond or special assessment is?
Process engineering, like not project engineering, process engineering, right? So, if that makes sense?
Kind of. Keep going.
So, engineering
I'm sorry, could you step to the podium, just because
Sure.
we would like the public to be able to hear on the report?
Yeah, so the second motion is what you're referring to. So it would be to develop a process, engineer a process that is outside of the use of a bond or special assessment. I know that's like restating what's stated already.
Yeah.
And that's why we would develop this team of council, residents, and office staff to help engineer that solution.
Okay.
So that's why they're back-to-back motions.
Okay. I think I understand that, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'll make a comment during my trustee comments on that. Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to new business. Ken, the SACWA Board of Directors appointment.
Yes, all right. Yeah, thank you. I'm on now. Thank you, Madam President. Every year, SACWA, the Southeast Oakland County Water Authority, for which the village is a member and buys its water, every year they require a resolution to appoint a trustee and an alternate. A number of years now, Pro Tem Jones has been the trustee on the SACWA board, and I have been the alternate. There is in your packet, Council, a resolution appointing the two of us again. I have talked with Pro Tem Jones, who is willing to do it again for another year. and I'm willing to be his alternate for another year as necessary.
I would make, the appropriate time, I'd make the motion to, as described in the packet, to make Trustee Jones the representative and Mr. Martin the alternate.
Do we need a motion?
So the resolution is
The
presented.
resolution is presented. Thank you, the resolution. I think Trustee Jones has been outstanding on reporting back to this council on the nuances within SACWA and the status of many things that are going on there, so I'm very supportive of keeping it that way. Do we need a second for the resolution?
Yes, you do.
Oh, second.
Sorry. Thank you.
I need to leave you
Is that a roll call?
And it's a roll call, so one moment. Blackburn,
Aye.
Hageman,
Aye.
Hedge,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Craybill,
Aye.
Michigan.
Aye.
That passes. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Next, almost last but not least, we have a request for a revocation of consent judgment at 32905 Bingham Road. And Ken?
Thank you. So the best way for this to be described is by the actual presenters. I am going to introduce Dean Nelson and
Samantha Kopaz.
sorry, I wasn't sure your name.
No problem.
Samantha Kopaz. They are the residents at the address in question, 32905 Bingham Road. The information about their request for the revocation is in your packet. Our attorney has also reviewed it, and I think the best way for this to go forward is for you to present. Mr. Nelson here is also on our planning commission.
Thank you for your time. So we've been a resident at 32905 Bingham Road since the summer of 2019. This relates to a building, an outbuilding on our property that's half on our property and half on the Hunter's property right next door. It's a building that's been there since the 1800s. It was one of the historic barns. And when they split the Adams Farms where the Hunters live and our house, which used to be the barn, there was also this other barn there, and they split it right down the middle of the building. So we kind of call it the condominium of outhouses. But anyway, back in I believe it was 1990 is when we have a court order, but the dispute arose back in the late 80s between the previous owner of our house and the previous owner of the Hunter's house at the time. And there was an issue where at that time the previous owner at our house had a buddy living in the outbuilding, and the neighbors didn't get along, is essentially what happened. And so they went to court and they put a consent judgment on the property, on that building, that essentially says what we can and cannot use with our portion of the building only. And it says that basically you cannot permanently or temporarily occupy that building, whatever that may mean. And that restriction goes above and beyond any sort of village ordinance that's out there. So what we are requesting, and we do have the Hunter's consent, which I believe Mr. Martin has received, is that this order, we go to the court and request that the order be vacated.
Thank you for that very concise
I'm happy to answer questions.
explanation. We do have the information and pictures. From what I understand, the picture that's here, so there's a white section and a blue section. but it's really all one, right?
Correct.
And there's just kind of like a wall.
There's a wall cutting down inside the building.
Right.
Between the white and the blue line is basically where the wall is, and there's no door attaching them. On the Hunter side, which is the white side, they have a similar space as we do. The Hunter side has no restrictions on it.
Right.
It's only on our side.
So your side has the restrictions, and the restrictions from back in the day are very vague. So not occupy at all, right? So it's like can you even go in there? And you're not looking to have somebody live in there. You're just thinking you can't even have somebody
in there,
any
because
time at all.
we don't know what
Right.
temporary occupy means. And
Right.
again, we're not looking to do anything that goes against any village ordinance that's out there. I will also tell you it's a cloud on the title. When we went to purchase the home, we didn't know about it when we initially placed an offer on the house. We found out about it at title work, and we walked away. And we walked away for about 6 months and ended up paying substantially less than what we were originally going to pay because of this title clot. It made it difficult to get a mortgage, and it reduced the value of the property.
Right, right.
So I have a question. On page 2 of the legal document, it says the structure may be used by the owner of the subject property or tenant of the entire subject property, if not occupied by the owner, for an accessory building subordinate to the use of the principal residence on the property solely for the following purposes: a private study, a children's playhouse, uses normal and customary in a living room or family room, including an ancillary kitchen with its present facilities for use, and also storage. So what would you use it for?
We haven't given it much consideration. However,
These are
let's
4
say
things you can do.
that's 4
Yeah.
things I can do. It doesn't say I could put exercise equipment in there, which would possibly be a good option. It doesn't say I could put a ping pong table in there for my children to play with it. I mean, it's just,
It
it's
says a
restrictive.
playhouse.
Well, what does playhouse
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that is an incredibly vague and onerous restriction on what's our property.
I guess my concern would be, like any other accessory building that is put on property for storage, this would not fit that description, then, is what you're saying, because this ordinance, this judgment also said you could use it as an ancillary kitchen, which goes beyond just a storage building.
So whatever is in the ordinance that's currently there that you would have in place for any of the other structures that are built on somebody's property with an outhouse, we'd be willing to abide by. I mean, we could put a brand-new building in the back of our yard, and these restrictions wouldn't apply. I mean, heaven forbid, we could have this historical thing burned down sometime, and we could rebuild and have no restrictions. I mean, we bought this because we love the historical nature of this house, but I'm just trying to explain that it's outserved its purpose, I think.
Yeah, as long as I can see it not being a permanent residence, where you're not leasing it out of VRBO.
Well, I think we'd be seeing you very quickly if that happens.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
I was just going to add what you said, President Blackburn, which is our ordinance wouldn't allow somebody to live in, you couldn't rent it out to somebody under our ordinance. I think we discovered today, Ken did that. You could have a special land use for service quarters, but that would have to come apparently to council for approval. So, from a legal standpoint, setting it aside is not really problematic. I think you should get a representation from the applicants that they won't do those things, just so everybody's clear that, what we're all agreeing to, but...
A question for Dirk. I guess I'm not this has to be vacated by the court?
The court has to do it.
But we're looking for a recommendation from the council that the court should do it?
Because it's consent judgment, there were 2 parties, their predecessors and us. So you need both parties to agree to set the judgment aside. then it would go to the court, and the court would set the judgment aside. But the village can't do it unless council approves the setting aside of it.
And just for a quick clarification, if I may, we are willing to prepare and pay for the court filings. We're both attorneys. Obviously, we wouldn't do anything without your counsel approving and reviewing and all of that, but we're not trying to make this a financial burden on the village.
And you will agree not to rent it and
Yes.
have people live in it? And
Yes.
So, thank you for saying that, because that was going to be my next question. And we have one former trustee in particular that rails at our excessive legal fees, and I just want to make sure that if we have any legal fees, because someone will have to review the stipulation to revoke the consent judgment, that you guys would cover our, which I assume would be minimal.
It should really be about a paragraph long,
Right.
just in order to set aside consent judgment, and then you have to end dismissing the case, because you got to get the case off the court's desk.
I'm happy to stipulate that we will pay for reasonable attorney fees. Emphasis on reasonable, but
I'm pretty reasonable, trust me.
And would it be appropriate, Dirk, to have something in there that said, notwithstanding the termination of the consent judgment, nothing in this shall be read to in any way impact any of the village's zoning ordinances?
You don't need that.
Don't need that, okay.
Because they hold anyway.
They would hold anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And you've already got a representation on the record that they understand that they can't use it for those purposes.
So this judgment was put in place, former owners on both sides. The current owner of the, is it the blue or the white piece?
The white piece.
The white piece. The white piece, do they agree?
they
have-
do, and I believe Mr. Martin already has a letter from him. I have a copy of it right
There
here.
we go.
That's the hunters.
Oh, did I? Was that in the packet?
No, I did not include it in the packet.
That would be my only concern. What's that letter say?
What?
I can
I
read
have it
it.
right here.
Would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Hi, Ken. We are Scott and Margaret Hunter, and we reside at 32851 Bingham Road. We have reviewed the judgment from 1990 recorded against our neighbor's property at 32905 Bingham Road. We do not oppose the request from Dean Nelson and Samantha Kopaz to have this judgment set aside. Scott Hunter and Margaret Adams Hunter.
We need a motion?
So what do we, there's no motion.
You would just make a motion to consent to setting aside the, what is the date? November 28th, 1990 consent judgment.
Could you say so moved?
So moved.
I think Kurt has a question.
Oh,
No, I wanted,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would move that we agree to set aside the consent judgment with the understanding that the legal documents will be reviewed by our attorney, and that the current owners will pay any reasonable attorney's fees that result.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
your
Feel free to call me.
patience and, yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work. That's how it's supposed to work.
We are going to move to the treasurer's report.
Thank you, President Blackburn. I changed the order a little bit on the treasurer's report. So first start out by check disbursements reported for May. And these include checks that were issued from May 1st, 2023 through May 17th, 2023. Out of the general fund in the total amount of $174,605.64. Next disbursement is check disbursement for the same time frame, 5/1/23 through 5/17/23, out of the gas and weight fund in the amount of $8,492 even. So those were the disbursements that we had for the month of May through the 17th. I will also add that in the past, it was for the entire month, but I want to make sure that we have specific dates when I'm reporting to council. So next month's meeting, it will be anything that I pay out from May 18th through whatever the date is that we close the report in order to present to council.
Okay.
The next item, the third item, is the Village of Bingham Farms profit and loss statement, profit and loss budget versus actual July through, yes.
You want us to approve the bills first?
I'm sorry, you could, yep, I'm sorry.
Want to do that first?
Can I make this motion? I'd like to, in honor of Mel Edmondson's passing, I'll make the motion as he would. I move to pay the bills.
Yes.
As he would say.
Would have said the same thing.
I think we'll all second that one.
I assume any discussion, we stay silent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
I'll let you make the next one. It just reminds me of Mel.
Yep.
Third item in the treasurer's report is the profit and loss budget versus actual, July through April 2023. Since it is as of April, we are 10/12ths of the fiscal year, or approximately 83%, 83.333% to be exact, of the years completed. And as we go through, again, we're tracking. The one thing that I do look at is I look at total expenses, and we're at 81.3% of the budget as of the date of this report. That is the profit and loss portion of budget versus actual. Any questions? Pending no questions, I'll go to the last item. Current investments of April 2023. As you look in your packet, there's a detail between breakout of general fund versus road fund for the investments. What I will point out is under the first line item under general, which is the local government investment pool. If you go back and look at what it was last month, it was 400,000, 400 and change in thousand. It is now 205,570. The reason for the decrease is with the cash burn in paying the bills for fire, police, I had to move over 200,000 I transferred from that fund, which was at a lower interest rate than taking it from somewhere else and moving it into our general fund within our bank in order to issue and pay the checks. The other item that I wanted to bring down is fourth from the bottom. There, since this is an April investment snapshot, the CD that's at First National Bank of America that we hold through multi-bank securities, that one has a maturity date of 4/28. Obviously, that happened last month, so I still reflected it in April's report, although that one has matured. It's been sold. There is new investment that you'll see in the May investment report. It's just that none of that has been, it's been settled and it's been posted, so we're waiting for one portion of it, it's been posted, we're waiting for it to settle. You'll see that, like I said, in May, but I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out because of the date of the 4/28/2023 maturity date. I will also glad to say is that what the investment that is going to be replacing it, instead of 1.3%, we are now going to be in another CD for 5% annual percentage rate. So again, as they fall off from the time that they were there, interest rates have increased, so we're taking advantage of those increased interest rates. On the road fund, again, it is made up of those three line items. We have a local government investment pool from Oakland County. That's at 607,802. And then we have the two CDs. One from that's being held is also from MBS, Multi-Bank Securities, from Fifth Third. And that one doesn't mature until the end of June. And then the Superior Bank CD also runs out until mid-August of 2023. And of course, once we reach those maturity dates, I continue to work with them to find out what the most investments are at that time that will give us the greatest yield as far as an interest rate and still within abide by Public Act 20 and our investment policy that we have in the village. So if you look at it, total for general fund, $3,169,797, and the total for the road fund, $1,107,802.
I think we still need a motion on the financial statements, right? I'd move to approve the financial statements.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Appreciate the detail on the investments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Trustee comments? Trustee Hatch?
No, I'm sorry I missed the budget meeting on Wednesday, but I needed to be out of town.
Trustee Howard?
I look forward to our upcoming study sessions. I think there are several topics that we've identified during this meeting. One is obviously my motion regarding the minutes, and the other one is the resolution brought to the council by members of our community, and I think that this takes some serious consideration. And the time and effort they took to put this together, and to meet and to start outlining a process, I think is very good, and it has action steps. So I'd like to see us consider this for a study session.
Trustee Hagman?
I go along with Diane Howard, Trustee Howard, I should say. I think there's a lot for us to go over, think about, and roll over in our heads. But two other things that I would like to bring up. Being a member of the Cable Board, I wanted to announce that we approved $180,000 to the Birmingham schools for upgrade of their audiovisual and video capabilities, and that goes to all all four schools, the three junior highs and both high schools. I don't know if you guys understand, but the money's collected by the Cable Board. The whole idea is to, whatever they've collected, sans whatever they need for office and so forth, goes away. The whole idea is to put it out in grants. So that's one good thing. The second thing is, and I'm involved with this greatly, in 2 weeks there's a major event in Detroit called the Detroit Grand Prix. And if you guys could get down there, that would be terrific. It's a 3-day event. It's free to the public, and it's good for Detroit.
Trustee Mashikian?
I concur with Trustee Howard, as well as working on some of these suggestions this evening and seeing what can be implemented.
Yeah. Same lines. I appreciate the number of residents that came to the meeting tonight. I think it's outstanding. I personally would be very supportive of some kind of subcommittee that includes residents when it relates to the roads, because it's such a big idea. I think again, I'll echo some earlier comments, but we're talking about it now, so we have a long runway. So I would be very supportive of that. I still want to understand that engineering solution more. So I would welcome, and I'll mispronounce your name, but I would welcome you at any study session where we're talking about this or any topic, because I would love to hear more about it.
The definition.
Thank you.
No comment.
No comment. I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:11.